Yeah, greetings from Madison, the Cairo of the Midwest. And yeah, I wanted to say, I don't know, three or four things only, and then we can do questions and open it up and everything. Personally, I want to say, and I want to represent Madison, is just thank you. Thank you, LA Occupy, 99ers here, and around the country for the reasons that Bob talked about earlier, not Bob Scheer, but Bob Reich. Which is simply you've put on the agenda in American politics an invisible place that no one can deny inequality and its corruption of our democracy. So there's no issue that's bigger. You're managing to get the labor movement united with other movements around that issue, and I thank you as a citizen, as a fellow citizen. I mean, I go to the Occupy stuff too, but I'm not camping out a lot, and you guys are. So hail Occupy, power to the people outside. Okay. Thank you. Bob asked me to say something about what we've learned or what we learned during our spring events that might be of general use, and then there were two other things I wanted to talk about. One is the opposition that you're going to be facing, and then the possibility of actually facing it down. So on lessons, here too, I'm not sure the lessons are particularly profound in terms of their statement, but they were certainly real profound in terms of the work that we did. Part of it is what the bank attacking each other, because what people see is a bunch of people saying something really simple. They're out there, and they want an economy that works for all, and a democracy that actually, a fair and just economy, and a democracy that works for all. It's a real simple message. I'm not George Lakoff. You'll hear from him later. I'm not going to give you advice on how to message your stuff, but I would suggest from Wisconsin, from the experience in Wisconsin, stick together and don't let the unions split off from the Enviros, and the civil rights groups split off from the unions, and certainly don't let the what are they called here, a black bloc? Don't let the punks that sometimes evade black bloc, get you into cops or problems with the cops. So keep it nonviolent and stick together. That's lesson number one that we heard. Lesson two, which is not news to you guys, is listen to each other and see each other. The thing that was most inspiring in Wisconsin was when suddenly, we got a late vote one night with the Senate, and we all got our Twitters or our Facebook things or robocalls or whatever. But suddenly, within 5-10 minutes, we had 20,000 people down at the Capitol. It's a small town, so it's easy to get to the Capitol. But it was pretty amazing. People were interrupted in their dinner, and then, whoo, they went there. And then more came, and then we occupied the Capitol and stayed all night, and, other things, followed from that. But, being in touch, listening to each other, hearing each other, respecting each other, again, very basic lesson, but often, as Bob was saying about the left, we often haven't really learned that lesson, as much in the last 50 years. You guys are an example of that lesson, which is another reason I'm saying thank you. And then, maybe a third thing is just keep your base and don't let the leaders get in the way of the base. Stay close enough to the base that you actually have credibility with it. We got into problems in Wisconsin when people started making decisions away from the people who are actually in the occupied parts of the Capitol, when, big national groups would come in and tell us sort of what to do, and when some of the unions who meant to do well put money into some things but not others, and when the decision about the whole program of what to do after all the bills passed, and they continue to pass, by the way, very sadly in Wisconsin, when the direction of the movement got away from the people who originally fueled it. So, watch that. Don't watch your leaders while don't trust your leaders. Watch, watch your parking meters. Sorry. The update from Wisconsin is fairly horrible. We're about to start doing the recall of Walker. It's going to be a very difficult. This is going to be a difficult task. We've got to, in 60 days, find roughly 600,000 signatures. The Republicans recently passed a law requiring that they all be now notarized, which means you have to deputize a bunch of people to be notarized. They're trying to have the recalls go on we're going after some senators as well in the newly redistrict and much more Republican districts than they were before. It gets colder in Wisconsin than it does in LA. I was expecting a lot of warm weather here. I'm a little cold right now, but in Wisconsin it really gets cold. And so the idea of going door to door all over Wisconsin and getting 10,000 notarized signatures per week over the next 60 days, that's the task that we have before us. So please wish us luck. Send us some love and some warmth your way. Okay, but so much for Wisconsin. The two things I wanted to say is just that the people that you're up against here, the people who run this country and run a good part of the world, are, very powerful people connected to the biggest economy in the world, and certainly the biggest military force. And as you are successful, they will come at you. In thinking about this incredible project of reclaiming the country that you've initiated here, I'd only urge you to be aware of the obvious, that the more you're successful, the more you're going to be attacked. And the more you're attacked, the more you've got to be very clear that you're in it for the very long haul. In that, I don't know if this is one of your optimism things or not, you might want to take solace from the fact that the right has constructed this nightmare that they've turned American democracy into over a long period of time. They needed the time because they started out with values that are not widely shared by the rest of the population. But they certainly had a plan. Most of you know about the famous memo that Lewis Powell wrote to his friend at the American Chamber of Commerce just about 40 years ago today, I guess, right? See, it's 2011, it was when was it? Was it 1979? Or when did he write that actually? It was 71, right? It was August of 71. So, more or less 4 years ago today. And, what he suggested was that if you really wanted to roll back the 1960s and really enact the Great Republican Program, which is basically to repeal the 20th century, oh no, I mean, well, it does get a laugh, but you ought to, I don't know if you know, but that is the explicit program. Karl Rove says this all the time. Grover Norquist says this all the time. The idea is to repeal not just the Great Society, the New Deal, but eventually the income tax itself, and get us back to a point of complete business domination of American public as well as private life, equivalent to that which obtained during the presidency of William McKinley, the guy who Mark Hanna got to stand up and beat the populist movement, which was threatening business elites at the time. And McKinley with maybe a very big military. But the idea is complete business domination, the destruction of all unions, secondary associations of all kinds that are not religious and supportive of business, the complete trashing of an affirmative state, et cetera, et cetera. That is the goal. That's always been the goal. But what Powell said was, look, if you really want to get that goal, you got to get organized. You got to go buy yourself some academics who will make up a bunch of theories for you. You've got to make sure that you have really good mechanisms of recruiting young people. You have to have a really simple message, which ideally is misleading, but which you can make true over time. And the basic message that he wanted to communicate was this. I mean, it was nothing about Jesus, and although he suggested often, invoking religion whenever possible. The basic message was, you are on your own, and anyone who tells you different is a liar. And what the Occupy forces are saying, I think, is a sort of directly counter message that no, actually, we are in this together, and if there are strength in, our strength is in numbers. But what Powell, the genius of the Powell Memorandum, and Scheer and others may have different views on this, was that it simply said, okay, so here is how you go about doing that. If your goal is complete business domination of American life, what you want to do is you want to go after all the institutions that could possibly stand in the way of business. Get rid of all the countervailing institutions. First, demonize the state, then demonize unions, then destroy unions, whatever possible. And get things to a point where the idea that you're on your own, that by making this progress on the institutional rollback of these protective institutions, you can actually get to a point where what you're saying to people, you're on your own, no one can help you, anyone who pretends otherwise is a liar, is increasingly their reality. So you look around and, what are you going to do if you've lost your home? Do you have the government to rely on? FHA may be saying something, FHWA may be saying something, but the Justice Department is not. The unions have declined. The unions are separated from the housing activists, et cetera. Anywhere you've got tremendous increases in vulnerability all over American society, and people feel, well, who's going to help me? And he suggested there are basically 6 essential elements in building a successful social movement that aimed at great power. And if you're not familiar with them, I'd recommend them for consideration. Occupy people. You know, first of all, you need mechanisms of communication with your base, with your leadership, to the extent you have leadership, and with the general public. And they built, of course, an enormous apparatus of such communication, you know, culminating in Fox, but with lots and lots of other things along the way. Second, you always have to feed your own movement. Call it blood, you know, as in new blood, as in young people coming in. That certainly doesn't seem to be a problem with you, but what the Republicans built on, the right built over the last 40 years, were incredibly big institutions that actually recruit, train, mentor, place young people, because they were in it for the long haul, which is something I think we're going to have to be in it for as well. Then you want a really simple message, you know, tell them something about markets being efficient or whatever, and you want a ton of people forth who are messengers for that, who will carry that message everywhere they go. And then you need some models to lift up, you know, like Proposition 13 that is still ruined, you know, California politics for well over a generation now. You still haven't managed to overturn, but that you could export elsewhere. Or, you know, new rules on child caning, or, you know, restrictions on, you know, or suggestions for privatization, whatever. And the organization, the American Legislative Exchange Council, and a variety of other similar organizations, though ALEC is probably the most prominent, came out of those suggestions. And then finally, you need, you know, money. You don't need a huge amount of money, but you need enough money to sort of keep things going. Anyway, so communication, new blood, message, messengers, models, and money are the basic institutional elements of any successful social movement that actually aims at power. And if you are, in fact, going after the most powerful people in the world, who all have those elements now coordinated, substantial measure on the right, you might want to think about, I don't know, building some of that. But so much for, and the Republicans, or the right now, spends a fair amount of money on this, on dimensions that, you know, are, I think, achievable by us, but they are considerable. Every year, say on the youth training alone, the estimates are they spend about $300 million simply on training young people to become bad young people or whatever. They spend a vast amount of money producing model legislation for ALEC and other people so that when young Republicans enter legislatures, they can, you know, introduce bad bills. And they spend, of course, a huge amount of money every cycle. The Democrats do as well, but the cycles now cost about, you know, $3 to $4 billion on the electoral cycle, and then annually there's another $2 to $3 billion that's spent in lobbying. When you think about the tasks of a movement that can put together money of that sort, you know, it can get a little bit daunting. But I don't think you need to do that much because the people are basically on your side. That's the advantage of the numbers. But some matter of coordination is probably a useful thing to at least dimly think about. Now, here's why, however, I think, how are we doing on time? Fun?
Take all the time.
Yeah. Here's why I think you should be totally optimistic undertaking that enormous task of changing a country and building the structures of a movement needed to be able to do that, because it is going to be a big fight. It's going to take a long time. It may not take 40 years, but I think it's probably going to take more than 1 or 2. That you can do this. That you can certainly run an economy currently. I mean, there's a view out that satisfies the interest that all of us have in sustainability and inclusion and, you know, some measure of market efficiency, but an economy that's relatively efficient and relatively fair and relatively sustainable is certainly within our reach. The best evidence of that is that other countries all around the world are currently doing it much better than we are. They're not doing it as well as we need to as a humanity, but there's certainly lots of models out there. And the natural place to start doing that, I think, is probably in the areas where we are, in the Occupy cities themselves. You know, the cities and the metropolitan areas that, you know, describe the cities are a relatively dense space. They contain most of the national wealth. Say the top 100 cities containing about 80% of national wealth and 65% of the population are on a relatively dense space, you know, only 12% of the landmass. That's where you're currently gathered, and that's where other people will gather over time. And you can, in those cities, you can you know, brave high road infrastructure and institutions of taking over the economy and actually start doing it more or less immediately. There are 2 ways, the high road language I should explain. There are 2 ways in which you make a lot of money in this economy. One, I'll call it low road, is treat people like roadkill and the earth like a sewer, and democracy is the enemy that you want to destroy. Okay, you can make a lot of money doing that, and a lot of firms currently do it. The other, I'll call it the high road, is you try to increase the productivity of places, including their land, meaning the environment, as well as the physical land, their labor, meaning people, and their physical and financial capital, meaning all the stuff of industry. You try to increase their productivity, and you charge consumers a premium for higher quality productivity. And a high road place, and you can find these in cities all over the world, and you could certainly build these cities here, can become high road economies. It's certainly a scalable model of economic development. Anyway, I just want to assert, and we can talk about this in questions if people worry about internationalization or technology inevitably displacing labor or anything else.